Hey guys, welcome back to another tips and advice video. Today we are talking about how patient I had to be in my PhD and some lessons that you can derive from my unfortunate struggles. Hey everyone, if you're new to the channel, my name is Amir Hussein. I am a postdoc in the University of Leicester in the United Kingdom. I love to talk about research so much so I decided to make YouTube videos and Instagram posts to try and help you guys with tips and advice for the research life. Just before I forget, do have a newsletter if you want to subscribe to that as well, just so you don't miss out on any advice I try to share. And if you're interested in staying tuned to these tips and advice videos, do consider subscribing, as you can see down below, so you don't miss any YouTube videos either. But let's get back to the topic at hand, which is patience in a PhD. Now, sometimes I wonder if PhD is technically just a sheer test of patience from many different ways, and we're talking about those ways in this video. From the research experiments, from the participants, from your supervisors, from the funding, from lack of issues within the university, and even patience with yourself. And when I look back at all of the things I, in particular, had to struggle with, it made me realize that I was coping with so much that I had no choice but to learn to be very patient, and I try to be now even more so. Even in my day-to-day life, I feel I'm a lot more patient, a lot more calm than I used to be before my PhD. I used to be very erratic, I wouldn't say hot-tempered, but very irrational sometimes. And I found that PhD really drilled the notion of don't take it to heart, don't actually react so quickly, let it be, and just try to figure out a calm and objective solution. So with today's episode, I want to be talking about three elements of the actual notion of patience, and that's how you have to deal with patience with people, in the form of supervisors or even colleagues, for example, dealing with patients from research, so actually the experiments or the analysis or the coding that you have to do, and then finally patience with yourself. And that's something very key that I'm going to be talking about. So let's strap in, grab your popcorn, nachos. I'm a big fan of nachos actually. And stay tuned and enjoy this patience show of research tips and advice for the research life. Let's get cracking on with number one. Patience with people. Now, I'm going to be talking about what I had to go through and then some tips and advice for you. And in terms of patience with people, my supervisor actually once said to me, it may be better if you do an MPhil instead. Now, despite supervisors' maybe best interests and maybe giving an option, no PhD student, no disrespect to the MPhil degree, would never like to hear that a supervisor telling you that maybe it's best if you do an MPhil instead. That hurts. But you had to be patient. I had supervisors who I could not even grab for 5 minutes. Yet I see now people on Instagram, again, I'm following Instagram, I'm a PhD over here. Now people on Instagram having weekly meetings with their team, not just their supervisor. And it made me realize that, wow, I had to be really patient, because I could have been complaining more. I could have, gone to the doctor or college and made a meal out of it, because I wasn't being given the support that I needed, and I was entitled to that support as a student, especially going into an area that I didn't know much about, as we often do. But I was going from biomedical science to essentially pharmacy, so it was not just within the biomedical science; it was a completely different area. Learning to make compounds. Chemistry was never my strong suit, and I never classed myself as a chemist, even though that was my first hard science, in the first part of my PhD. So it made me realize that for tips and advice for you, that you will have to learn to persevere, take it on the chin, expect delays, unfortunately, from your supervisors, within reason, because sometimes if it's too much, that needs to be investigated, that needs to be escalated further. But you will have issues with maybe technicians or other people in the lab that you have to realize that, oh, do you know what? Somebody might have messed the plate reader or the cell culture hood, or somebody might have messed with your coding cloud storage system. So you will encounter these problems and know that, unfortunately, it is a part of a PhD. It's not the nice thing about a PhD, but it does happen. I see now with all the different postdoc jobs that I have in the different labs that I work in, that many a time you see people in the way or booking something that they supposed to book earlier, or using something that they're not supposed to use, or not finding the boss when we need to, or somebody saying this. There will be so many times where your patience will be tested from people, and it's natural, and we have to understand that's part and parcel of work culture, not just research culture. So bear that in mind. 2 is all about patience with the research itself. Now, regardless of whatever research you're doing in terms of quantitative, so in the lab, or qualitative, maybe with participants, or computational, or archaeological field study, whatever it might be, the research will drive you nuts, because there will be times where it would take you double the time to do something. So in my case, it took me 2 years to synthesize compounds that should have taken a year. I had to wait 7 months for a chemical to arrive when it should have been arrived in a few weeks. I had to wait nearly over a year for a cell line to come so I could start growing cells and testing the compounds against cells. As soon as my new supervisor came, within a month, I started growing cells. Whereas before, I was waiting on and on and on for it to come. So even within the experiment alone, you'll have to deal with patients. And even with the deliveries, with the research presentations, any aspect of the research itself, it will drive you nuts. You will go insane. You will want to pull your hair out. I've got less and less hair, but you know what I mean. And the notion is that it is part of the experiment. I genuinely say it is part of the PhD. It is essential for it to drive you nuts. Reason why is that's how you learn to be a better researcher, to be a better person, and to rise above difficulties. If it was smooth sailing, you won't gain much from a PhD. So I genuinely say this as a joke. It gets old to other videos, but it doesn't get old to me. Whenever somebody has a difficulty and the experiment failed, I politely say, welcome to research, welcome to a PhD. I use it as a joke in a good way to say, now you can start to deconstruct what went wrong, what happened, so you can fine-tune the research methodology and fine-tune your skills. So recently I've seen on Instagram as well, people saying that, experiments fail and it's really frustrating. It is natural to feel upset, to feel down. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but at the same time you should look at it, right, what can I learn from it, what can I move forward, tomorrow, crack on, let's go. You may take that evening off because it's painful because of that issue that you had, but you gotta crack on. And with any part of research, you would have delays, you would have failed experiments. You will spend 6 months trying to do something and you only get like one single result. That is part of research. And expecting anything less will make you upset, will make you depressed. Expecting it to go right the first time, second time, no. When I was doing my PhD towards the end, I used to say, it's not if, it's not when, it didn't work. Fine, right, let's look at what actually went wrong. That time and that energy that you look at to focus on deconstructing and compartmentalizing, right, where could it have gone wrong, troubleshooting it, methodically looking at ways to say, right, let's remove that, let's remove that, let's remove that. Okay, it was this that was causing a problem. Although it's frustrating, it's part of research. And I kind of decided to myself to say, right, I'm not expecting it to go right or wrong, I just want to learn. Yes, it is, especially as a PhD student, you're enthusiastic, you want it to work. And sometimes it doesn't and it hurts because it may not be in line with the hypothesis or it's not like good data. Again, that's a whole different story. But it is part of research for the research itself to test your patients. So tips and advice for you is to be aware of it's going to fail. It will fail. Your poster will be awful. The way you've made your buffers or the way you did your first coding, it will go wrong. Expect it to go wrong. Want it to go wrong so you can learn how to do it better. Don't expect golden experiments. As long as you're writing everything properly, you're recording everything properly, you've got time to troubleshoot. Don't worry about going right or wrong because you will get through in the end. There's many people who have PhDs where they've disproven something. Even though they started out to prove something, they showed 3 or 4 different categorical ways because they recorded everything and they were really organized to disprove an avenue, and they got a doctorate. Because your PhD isn't about getting some beautiful data. It's about, can you research independently? Can you think of a project, look at controls, look at experiments, come to a conclusive story, defend what you did, why you did it, again the Winehouse scenario. That's what the research is about. So don't be too disheartened when you have failed experiments. Be disheartened when you make the same mistake again. Because, as we know, we should learn from our mistakes. It is inevitable to be frustrated from research, but it is a test of patience. We have to keep going. We have to keep going. Lastly is the patience you have to have and understand with yourself. And this was a very difficult topic for me when I was writing kind of the notes for this video, because I really, really struggled with this to the point where if you want to look at it from how I look after myself, because if I'm not patient with myself, that means I'm either overworking, I'm under resting, I'm not taking breaks, I am blaming myself too much, I am, not giving myself, not respecting my time. That's all part and parcel of me not being patient with myself because I am not respecting myself enough just to calm down, just to take a break. I did not do this very well, and I do not want the whole reason I started YouTube and Instagram is to make sure you don't go through the same pains I went through. And this is a really touchy subject that I don't want you not to have patience with yourself in the wrong way. I want you to sit down, enjoy yourself, spend time with yourself, be patient in the right way with yourself because you can very easily go too extreme. And I want to bear with me here because it's very important. You can go to an extreme where you are not patient with yourself at all, you're overworking, you're constantly working 7 days a week, and experiments are failing worse and worse, and you have issues. On the other side, you will have problems where you'll be like, do you know what? I'm not going to do anything. That's it. I'm 5 o'clock. I finished. That's it. And you're missing out on key experiments that you need to get done because there is a balance between working hard, working smart, and making sure you have a good work-life balance. I am not the one to say, right, sometimes you do have to work on the weekends. I'm a big advocate of that. Sometimes you do have to stay late night. And there are moments where people will say, oh, it's because of you got bad time management. No, there are some times where you need to stay to finish off a good experiment that you spent weeks to do. Those things happen. It's when it happens too often it becomes a problem. Now, I was not patient with myself enough to say, right, stop, I'm not feeling well, I need to take a break. So my advice for you is the research is not more important than your own health. PhD will tear you apart. I can categorically tell you, 9 times out of 10, it will tear you apart. It will beat you up permanently. Like in the sense of during your PhD, it will hurt. You will have failed things. Things will drive you nuts. You would spend hours and hours of things won't go right. But you cannot go down into depression and anxiety because of the research because it's not worth it. Your life, your health, your mental and physical health. I lost so much weight. I became like a stick thin because I wasn't eating. I was just working, working, working. I was sleeping on the sofa and then waking up and going to the lab. That's me not being patient with myself. That's me not looking after myself. And I don't want that to happen to you. Whether you're a postdoc, a PhD, master's, or just thinking of doing undergrad, like you're in your undergrad right now, I do not want the research to take over your life because it's not worth it. You work hard, you put in the extra hours, you graft, but you make sure you have time for yourself. Analyze the data the next day, right? Enjoy the evening. And that work-life balance is important. We don't want to glamorize working extra hard and working non-stop, but we also don't want to glamorize just stopping there when you could have done a bit more work. There has to be a balance, right? So my advice when this patience with yourself is look after yourself. Part of being patient with yourself is looking after yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself either, because as I mentioned in part two, experiments will fail. Research will fail. It's part and parcel. So don't be too hard. It's nothing you did wrong, right? Unless you broke something on purpose, that's a different story. So without me rambling too much, is I want to make sure that you have patience with yourself because it is more important than the research. It really is. So guys, those are some quick top tips on being patient with yourself and looking at 3 angles of patience. So you can learn from my mistakes, learn from my difficulties, so you're better equipped if you face those scenarios. And that's essentially what I try to do on this YouTube channel, on Instagram, is sharing all the troubles, the issues, the things that I dealt with. So you have a better chance of dealing with it a lot easier, a lot more effectively, a lot better than I did. So you can have a more smoother, more prosperous, more profitable PhD experience than I did. But in any case, I shall hopefully see you in the next video. If you do like this video, do give it a like if you can. Comment down below what else you would like me to talk about. You can find me on amir.phd, Instagram over here. You can also email me at amir.researchtribe.org, or you can comment down below and I'll be sure to have a chat with you if you are there. In any case, as always, I shall see you in the next one. Take care.